Hey guys, welcome back to another Ishan S Show Daily. Today we're going to be talking about the primary calendar that we have ahead of us as we look ahead into the remainder of this Republican primary. So you might be looking at the January and February calendars and you might be wondering why I've only put this month and next month. And the reason behind it is pretty simple. I just don't think there is much of a path forward after this for any of the candidates. Donald Trump is by far doing much better than what anybody would have expected him to be doing, because everybody expected that he'd be doing great in this primary, but what the numbers are showing us is that he's doing even better than what we thought was good and amazing. He is doing pretty well in this primary, and he's running away with this nomination 50%, 60% in some states. So his likelihood of actually losing is very minimal, and I don't even think it's possible. I'm talking to people who are familiar with the campaigns of both Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, and really a success for them is pretty much contingent on only one thing, and that's if Donald Trump somehow his candidacy implodes and he no longer can run for president. But that is such a high bar of potentially happening. There's such a high bar for that to happen, that they are just sitting on a bit of a lost cause, because that's coming directly from people involved in that campaign, that they are saying that we're only in this race until Donald Trump implodes, and then we take the spot for him. But I don't think that strategy is going to work. All his indictments, all of his controversies, everything he's done, it's made him more popular with his base. No matter what he does, his base just loves it, and there's nothing that they can really do about it. It's a funny thing to be watching, because these candidates, no matter how much effort they're putting in a normal election, they'd actually be really strong candidates, Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. But the effort they're putting in, it shows. It shows how much they're going to struggle, because no matter how much work they put in, no matter how many hours, no matter how many days, no matter how many town halls or events or voters they meet, in the end, it's just not working. The numbers don't show for it. But I know I just sounded so pessimistic, and if you support these candidates, you might be upset by my not so exciting endorsement or lack of one for your candidate. But I think the way I'm looking at this is the only possibility that I see any scope of success for Donald Trump's challengers, Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis. It rests in these 2 months. They need to perform well in these 2 months in order for me to actually think that they are viable candidates to go into the rest of the primary and to that convention. I don't think they have a path after this. It's a bit of a stretch to even take it to February, but that's the truth. They just don't have a path ahead of this. If they cannot prove themselves by February, they cannot take this into Super Tuesday. They can't take it into the heavy primary states, because we have a lot of spaced out single state primaries and caucuses in the next few months. But as soon as those are over, it becomes big amounts of delegates. Like, so many are piling in, and they're all throwing so much support behind one candidate usually. It's how Joe Biden was able to take the 2020 Democratic nomination. It was only after he was doing really poorly, and it took until South Carolina in February for things to turn around for him, but then he had a really strong showing there, and all of a sudden, everything turns around, and all of a sudden, he's winning every single state and running away with the nomination, while at first there was this possibility that he might not even be the nominee, despite being a former vice president. Came in 5th place in Iowa, 5th place in New Hampshire. He came in, I think, 4th place in Nevada, but then South Carolina's 1st place finish, that turned things around for him. So that's where I want to focus on. These next few dates that I'm going to be mentioning are going to be crucial for the Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis campaigns. If it's nothing on these days, it's game over. So the first one, that's tomorrow. It's the Iowa Caucuses, the all-important first in the nation caucus that really sets the tone for the campaign. Once we have those votes cast, some votes, because there are private ballots, but once we have those caucuses happen, it sets the tone for the rest of the primary. If you do well in it, you are now seen as a really good candidate. If you do pretty bad in it. It's campaign ending for some. So the Iowa caucuses are very important at setting that tone for the rest of the nation. And that's tomorrow. Tune in on YouTube. I'm trying to figure out something to present. Follow us on Instagram for it. We're going to be pushing stuff out. Check out theishanshow.com. We're going to be keeping a close eye on all of that. But if we look at it, these Iowa caucuses, they're on Monday. And historically, they've played a really big role. They've been able to end certain campaigns, and they've been able to effectively diminish the performances of some candidacies. It doesn't matter how much effort you put in, it just doesn't work for them. And the Iowa caucuses set up this playbook and it's a playbook that so many use. Going into Iowa, Nikki Haley is now the second place candidate. She's doing pretty well. And it's not that the state is like all for her. Within her support, it's a pretty weak base of support, but one that's not really going to be convinced. If we look at the Des Moines Register NBC News poll that came out yesterday, it shows that she has a big amount of swath of support, 20%, but that 20% support is not all loving her, and they're not all committed to her. And that causes a few hiccups for her, especially as we get into this really cold weather that we have. Ron DeSantis, on the other hand, Ron DeSantis has come into third place, but he has a pretty strong ground game. A lot of apparatus has been set up here. And so going into caucus night, there is a possibility that even though he's polling at 16%, he might be able to turn out more of his supporters, and proportionally that might outweigh all of the people that come out for Haley. Because if you have 10% of 100 come out and you have 50% of 40, that's more. And that's the type of difference we're looking at, the enthusiasm that you have for coming out. But the Iowa caucuses, I've said it repeatedly, are not that important for Nikki Haley as much as they are for Ron DeSantis. So the first potential strike that I'm seeing for Ron DeSantis is Iowa. He loses that, it's over. Nikki Haley, I don't think it matters if she comes in third place because the lowest she will get is third place. But if she does not get third place, she's getting second place, or she's doing even better and getting first place. But obviously, first place is out of the question. I think that's still Donald Trump's by and large. Next is the first primary in this primary. I know people get confused by what that means, but like Iowa does a caucus, so that means you meet in a big gym or an auditorium or something, and then you make a public ballot. In New Hampshire, you have a primary. It's a simple ballot. You vote for the person. That's always usually 8 days after the Iowa caucuses, and same thing we're doing this year. So the New Hampshire primary is going to be a little different because there you can have Democrats, independents, and other groups register to vote in that Republican primary. And so it's a lot more of a moderate based primary and a moderate based system, because it's not about winning the party's, hardliners. It's about winning moderates and independents. And Nikki Haley is doing pretty well in this field. Despite the fact that Donald Trump is still polling in first place, it's a much weaker first place. And because of that weak first place, Nikki Haley has been able to, jab away at a little bit of support consistently, enough to put her in a strong second place at 30%. But with Chris Christie out of the race, she's able to take all of his support, or nearly all of his support. And Donald Trump is staying stagnant, and he's not moving that much. So that type of performance in New Hampshire is going to be so important. If she does well in Iowa, that brings momentum into New Hampshire, and that's on top of momentum she already has. She brings that momentum into New Hampshire. New Hampshire is going to be what her strategy is, the springboard for her. Ron DeSantis has no plans of campaigning in New Hampshire anymore. Apparently, a memo that was released by his campaign showed that he's actually going straight to South Carolina, just skipping New Hampshire. And I think it's true. It's a bit of a lost cause. He's polling at 5% in that state. So that's remarkably small, and especially in a primary. That is a tiny amount. But Nikki Haley is feeling comfortable in New Hampshire. So depending on how those do, that is going to be the first for Ron DeSantis. That's tomorrow night. And then Nikki Haley, it's on the 23rd. It is the final nail in the coffin for their candidacies failing, but it could also be one way of pushing open the coffin to free themselves out of this expectation that the media has that they're just in this to lose eventually. Some other important dates. The 18th is our first ABC New Hampshire debate, and then the 21st is going to be the CNN debate. We have two debates, two opportunities to look at what this primary is shaping up to be, and how this might change stuff, how this might impact the vote. I don't think a lot of people are going to be changing their minds a lot in this next week, but it's two opportunities for these candidates to make their pitches. So those are the two debates that we have. Then moving on to February. February is going to be a bit more of a tight issue for these candidates. So the first thing is on February 8th. February 8th, you have the Nevada caucus. The Nevada caucus is different from the Nevada primary. So there is a Nevada primary that's on the 6th. Now, Nikki Haley is registered in the Nevada primary, but she isn't registered in the Nevada caucus, and that's just because of issues between the state Republican Party and the Democrat-controlled legislature. The Democrat-controlled legislature said that it's going to be a primary and that you have to be on the primary for a primary to take place. The GOP in the state of Nevada said, no, we're going to run our own caucus, and those are the delegates that are going to go. So if you're on the primary ballot, then you are not going to be on the caucus ballot. So Nikki Haley's on the primary ballot, and as a result of that, she's not in the caucus ballot, and so therefore she will not be getting any delegates from Nevada, so we can just count her out right now. Nevada going in, I think, is going to be another fight for Ron DeSantis, because, again, Nevada is a strong Trump state in terms of this primary. So the possibility of DeSantis not doing well in Nevada is decently high. It's going to be less than New Hampshire, because in New Hampshire he's kind of lost that. That's a bit of a lost cause. But without Nikki Haley in the race, a lot of anti-Trump voters still go to a non-Trump candidate. Not all non-Trump candidates as supporters are anti-Trump. So the possibility of some Nikki Haley caucus goers going to DeSantis might actually be higher in the state of Nevada. And because of that, there is this possibility that DeSantis comes out on top and potentially can take second place, and a strong second place in Nevada. That won't be anything to launch him forward because of the fact that there's just so much complications going on in Nevada that they've unnecessarily just caused all this confusion, and they don't have a lot of delegates up for grabs. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, but it would be nice for DeSantis to snag that win, especially without Nikki Haley in his way. He could take a larger sum if he does his work right. But for me, the thing I'm looking at right now is South Carolina. That's on the 24th. It's on a Saturday. So the South Carolina primary. And this is going to be really important because this is the home state of Nikki Haley. She was the governor of the state. She's well known in the state. She's polling at, I think, 21% on average in the state. Donald Trump is at 52%. So there's not a lot of room for other people. But that's the deal with this state, that Nikki Haley is going into this state saying, hey, you know me. I was your governor. I was fighting really hard for you guys here. And I think this is going to be Nikki Haley's last day of viability as a candidate. If she cannot do well in South Carolina, it's game over for her. It's just done. Because this is her home state. She's won the state twice. Well, actually 4 times if you count the governor primaries. But she's won this state 2 times. She was a popular enough governor in South Carolina. It was her home state. She knows the state really well. So if she cannot win South Carolina, I don't think there's a path forward for her. And of the 2 candidates, I think she's more likely to make it this far. I don't know how much we can talk about DeSantis, because DeSantis isn't really even, I don't expect him to even make it this far. I don't know if he'll actually we'll be talking about him by the time we get to the February primary. There's a possibility that we just don't talk about it. Possibility, though. Don't count anyone out, right? But yes, 24th, that's the South Carolina primary. That is the all-important thing. There's a month between the New Hampshire primary and the South Carolina primary, and the people in the South Carolina GOP did that on purpose. They said they wanted the candidates to spend as much time in South Carolina as they could getting to know voters. So they're going out and they're trying to do that, and they're trying to create this environment where the candidates can get to know voters much better, and the voters to the candidates. So Nikki Haley's going to have a month. I don't think she's going to care about Nevada. If I was Nikki Haley, I would not be going to Nevada even once. I would stay put in South Carolina. It's home for her, so I don't think she's going to mind. Stay put in South Carolina and not go anywhere else. Campaign consistently in the big metro areas. Because this is about, in South Carolina, unlike the states of Iowa and New Hampshire where they do proportional delegate allocation, in South Carolina, it's by congressional district. So you have to actually win literal geographic regions in the state to take home delegates. So DeSantis, and for all intents and purposes, I think I'm going to write him off because I don't think he has enough of an apparatus or a strong enough position to be able to take this out. So I think Nikki Haley has this possibility to be able to take in charge and potentially take some delegates, because geographically, if she can focus on urban areas where they are not going to approve of Trump as much, she can take those congressional districts and therefore take those delegates. And that's where I'm thinking she can try to fight her way out, but so many things are contingent on doing well in January. Like, if they don't do well in January, I think it's pretty much game over. DeSantis' candidacy could be game over by tomorrow night, for all we know. It depends on how he does. But for Nikki Haley, I think South Carolina is really where it's finished. But we're not going to count anything. We're going to wait. We're not going to make any conclusions until every vote is counted, until the very last vote is counted, because that's how democracy works. And we're going to keep a very, very close eye on how all of this turns out, because it's so important that we keep watching just how crazy and how intense this might be, where this is going to turn out and where this is going to shift and how this might change things. But yeah, that is our primary calendar for all of this that's happening. This is our primary calendar. This is what the next few months are going to look like. And accordingly, that's what some of the videos and episodes on the podcast are going to look like as well. We're going to be following this calendar very closely to see how things turn out. But that's all we have for today, guys. Tune in tomorrow for the Iowa caucuses. Keep your eye on the votes and the results coming out of there. It's an exciting time in the election year. And it's a really fun time in politics. So subscribe to the Political News blog. Check out the IshanShow.com. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on social media. You know the drill. Keep doing all that you do to support us. Thank you so much. And we'll see you tomorrow for the Iowa caucuses. Bye-bye.